we are ready to put the armatures onto the bases. So the different types of blocks you're going to have, a lot of you or several of you are going to have some of the smaller hardwood blocks. Some of you are going to have these round, softer woods that are too thin to pin and hold the armature by itself, but plenty wide enough to hold like a little scene if you want to do like a diorama or give it something around. And so there's a few things that you want to consider. So we have our surgery. You may have a sculpture that you want to be able to, like it's designed on purpose for you to be able to put it into the base and remove it and work on it separately and then put it back. So you want to be skilled enough or comfortable enough to do these things as you're building your characters, because you don't want to feel stuck. You want to feel like, okay, this guy, his legs are too short, he had like little stumpy legs and it looked kind of funny, and I want to extend his legs. So what I had to do is he was already glued down into the armature. I actually had to drill from behind. See, there's still a piece of metal and JB weld in there. I actually had to rip him off this base. You see his old feet marks? That's where his feet used to be. Right, and so right now it's cool, I can take him off and on, but it's a little too rocky, like he's not stable. So I want to be able to remove him, put him on and off the base, but we also want to put him in and feel like when I put the clay on his legs and his feet, if he's still rocking back and forth, that's where the ankles will get weak and break and the clay will actually crack and snap on there. So whatever clay you're working on, whether it's the Sculpts or the monster clay, I like the parchment paper, so you have some cooking parchment paper. Just cut up a few slices for yourself, because otherwise your clay will stick to your surface that you're working on in all likelihood. So being able to drill multiple holes in your wood, you just want to make sure you drill a hole far enough away from the other one if it's soft wood, so that it doesn't get weak and snap. And if you have a base that's too thin, for those of you who have this round one, what you'll do is you'll get an awl. If you can find an awl, you want to get the staple out. So I'm going to push it underneath the staple and kind of gently push inside of here and wiggle back and forth. Careful ever pushing a sharp object towards your body. So if you're still really new to working with sharp tools, work away from yourself at all times, never towards yourself or towards your other hand. So I'm going to just push away from myself underneath this staple and kind of leverage and wiggle around until it gets up off the wood just a little bit. There it goes. And get it underneath and pull. And now the staple's up a little bit. And then what you can do is take your snips and grab it and twist sideways, and it should pop right out for you. So you can take your staple out. And then these are always a pain in the neck to get the adhesive off, so just scrape those off. So yeah, see how soft that wood is? Like the adhesive just pulls the slivers right off. But now if you have both, you have this one and you cut yourself a block that's this size, and this size is 3.5 by 3.5. So your 2x4s should be the same size, roughly. But the 2x4s are cheaper, they're softer, and they're thicker, so they hold the pins. So all these options are before you, right? You should be comfortable getting a bunch of these little pieces whenever possible. Get them cut, sand the edges, make sure there's no fragments, and have a workable set of bases to quickly put your speed sculpts, because you want to be able to make a couple of these for your next assignment. You're going to do some speed sculpts and you're going to do busts, and those will be above the waist, no limbs required, just a torso and the head. And we're going to talk about doing expressions, which is one of my favorite parts of the class, is adding facial expressions and the emotion to go with the character. So if you want to stack the blocks, we would use screws to connect them together, and typically you don't want the screw heads to show on top, but that's not that big of a problem if you cover it with some clay. So you can see this guy right here, mush is indeed 2 blocks. So there's a block about this size underneath him, and once I got the cap on the body, it was way too heavy. It was rocking back and forth, so I actually screwed this block to that block and then covered the block with clay, and you can't even see the screws because the screws I covered with monster clay. So whatever clay you use, I think you could just do a plain base, and definitely for your speed sculpts, this plain base is okay. But for your midterm or your final, I think making the base look interesting and giving it some sort of little environment to go with the character looks much more professional, and it tells more of a story for the character. So we're gonna take care of putting some new holes in for this one. And then also for this character that we're working on, so the more the gnome characters is in the same world, a little bit smaller stature, but these characters would be, this is the actual size relation. Now this character is going to be riding a chariot, right? So we have kind of a little tractor tread I started. We'll go through step by step how to do the hard surface pieces, how to slice these out, and you can see a little assortment here. So putting down parchment paper and having some boards. I just got like a little box top here, and I have a lot of pieces started here. So here's the first prototype of the chariot that was really kind of boxy and straight, and I used some impressions to put little rivets and grids and things like that, so that was more of an experiment. Here's a held item for mush, so I was working on that one, and I'm not going to put it in his hand right now because his fingers are getting weak each time I bend them back and forth, but this will be held in his hand. Definitely want to mold, work on that piece separately. Then that's, again, just a chopstick. We love chopsticks in this class, right? You can use chopsticks for all kinds of stuff. There's a mohawk, so we can play with different hair accessories. So you can really accessorize whatever it is you're working on, even if it's a creature that doesn't have any clothing or costume. You can accessorize and play with the horns, the feathers, the fur, different positions, different claws. You can like swap pieces in and out and see what works for you. So for this one, I got a bit longer block, right? And here's the head. You can see it's the skull. I did it after like a weasel skull that's holding the spoke or the axial piece for the wheel in his mouth. So this would be the front wheel. Put him up here, like so. And then pin this guy down into the chariot. So if I'm gonna do that, if you're gonna put your character inside of the piece, I just widen that out a bit. So I just widen the tires. What I can do is I can hide another smaller block beneath the platform, so that way when he's in the chariot, that's why these pins are so long and so strong. See, this is way oversized for the size of the sculpture, but I did it on purpose because I wanted the legs to be so strong that if he is going like this, I can literally have him dangling off the side of the chariot in 1 foot. And even if I bulk him up with some clay and he gets rather heavy, he might get, half a pound. Like this little guy, he's at least a pound, like 1 pound of clay. That's going to be as much monster clay as you can put on there. So if I do that and I pop a hole through there, there's nothing, this little thin sheet of wax is not going to hold up. So I would put another little wooden block underneath him. And so for that, again, get your scraps together and you can decide what size block needs to be underneath there, and then you can disguise the block with whatever. You could have rubble, you could have skulls underneath, plants, whatever, rocks, whatever terrain you want. So this is a few different options that you want to consider while you're want to pin your base. So the first one that we already did was pretty straightforward, which was just putting a single pin. So whichever size, this is the 16th, this is the 8th. You can have some thinner, like maybe you want to do like a serpent or something that's not going to have too much clay. If you want to have a head on there, sometimes with this stuff we'll twist a little circle to designate where the head is, and that kind of helps you keep your position. Oh wow, that's really easy to move. And this is a good example. Like if I put the sculpture, if I put the clay on here like I did with these guys, this one's just going to slide out pretty easily. But it's so deep when it goes in there that it's deep enough where it's not going to be a problem. And if I needed to, I can grab right here at the end, pull that pin up, and I can see that's how deep I went when I drilled the hole, when Angelina drilled the hole, I should say. So it's in a little over halfway, which is good. But if, as you pull it in and out of the wood, this is soft wood, over time that hole is going to open up a little and it's going to get looser and looser, which isn't that big of a deal, but just stuff to be aware of as you're considering how you want to build these blocks. So for this guy, I want to reposition these holes for his feet. So because the wood's soft, and I know there's already these holes cut in the other sides, I'm just going to pivot, and this is going to basically keep him from being in a boring, side by side kind of regular foot position around the top. And we're going to See, this one got way too big right here. That's the loosey-goosey one. So I want to go maybe at least 1/2 inch away. And before I do that, I want to pop the hole in. There we go. So one there, and then juxtapose off to the side. Let's get that started first though and see where we want that hole to go. So once I get that hole, the pilot, I take the drill, and again, I can go a little slower all the way down. And then when I pull up, go nice and slow, and that avoids tap tap. And that way you get all the sawdust without having it spray everywhere. So now, because the pins are so strong, if the hole's tight and the pins are strong, I can have them go in here with just a single leg even. So let's see how that works. And there he goes. So that is now pretty darn stable. Right, and he's got his telescoping battle axe. It goes out, becomes a halberd, comes back in, becomes two-handed axe, and then have it separate. And he can go two-hander style and have 2 battle axes, one in each hand. And again, this is the brass stock that we were playing around with. Okay, so another thing to consider is the proportion. So we were looking at this and saying, well, this base is really big, but his shoulders are broad. So we decided that that base is proportionately a pretty good match for this character. We had looked at maybe putting him on a smaller hardwood base like this guy. And I tend to like bases smaller in proportion to the character. I think it looks better, it plays better. You know, there's a lot of correlations there to tabletop gaming and D&D, but I might, since this is a removable, I might cut this one as well. Because if the base is smaller, the emphasis is on the character, right? And I think you want to keep that emphasis on the character, and the base should be just big enough to make sure it's fully stable and that you're not having any instability. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that for this guy. So again, putting on parchment paper, and you can even put bubble wrap under there if you're worried about having any delicate parts. And this is hardwood, so I'm gonna pop a hole. Okay, and barely did anything. And come back in here and start off slow. There we go, all the way through. Let's see if we're all the way through yet. Not quite. You'll usually feel it give, and then pull out slowly. There we go, and then tap, tap. All right. Again, didn't go through. That's all right though. I had my munch board just in case. And now let's give this a shot. So again, I'm going to bend him at the kneecap and slide that in, and maybe not that far. And there we go. And if I pin the other hole and have him doing whatever pose we want, that's going to, you know, his foot's going to be coming off the edge slightly, but I kind of like that. And even though that one does match him nicely, if I want the emphasis to be on this character, and then he's just going to be like a snow barbarian, you have a big cape, like cloak with fur, or not cloak, but a cape with fur coming off. I got to do like the kilt, and his boots are going to have a thicker tread, so he might be popped up a little bit like that, which is why I didn't go all the way through. See the distance on there though? That turned out almost perfect. If you wanted to, and if it goes out the back, it doesn't matter. You just, if the sharp end of this pin is all the way through and it's hitting the bottom, it's going to scuff up your table and cause trouble. So if you do ever go through all the way through the bottom, take it out, trim the end of that pin off so that it's not protruding through all the way. And that should be good enough. The other thing you can do is if it is too loose and you don't like what's happening, you can actually get a screw and you can drill the screw right next to the hole that the pin goes into. So I'll show you guys that in the next video.